Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Fantasy Files Reacts, where we talk about our favorite movies, TV shows, and video games. This is one of those rare times where we can actually cover a combination of the latter two, since today I'll be giving you my take on episodes 3 and 4 of The Last of Us on HBO Max. Mike from Mike's Book Reviews was going to join me again tonight, but he had some family stuff come up. So he's going to join me for the next one when we do, what is it? 5 and 6 would be the next one, I believe. Yeah. So we're going to get right into it here. But first, don't forget to like and subscribe. This is our new second channel, so we'd love to see that subscriber count go up. I'm going to try and release a lot more content on here than I have been, so stick around because there's going to be a lot of Last of Us content coming at you, as well as some anime content that Gabe and I have both been working on that we're really, really excited about. But without further ado, let's get into my general thoughts about these episodes, as well as some things that I've thought about since our last video. And please remember that there will be spoilers for the games as well as the show up to this point, although I can't really see any spoilers for the second game coming up here. But yeah, we're going to get right into it. I'm just going to go through my notes here. So I've been seeing some people worrying about the pace that they're going at, with episode 3 kind of taking up a whole episode on certain characters, and episode 4 feeling a little bit like a filler episode, I guess. I didn't really get that impression, but I think a lot of other people did. And I haven't quite understood this because I feel like they're not going to get the whole first game in the first season. I think that there's just no way that they can pack all of that into the first season. So if we get 1.5 seasons of the first game, or 2 seasons of the first game, and then 2 seasons of the second game, that's good with me, man. I think that the more time we can get in this world and the more time we can spend with this series, all the better, because there's only 2 games. Like, that's where it stops. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they've said that there's not going to be a third game. Like, that's how it ends with the second game there. So, I mean, do we really only want 2 seasons of the show? I think I want more seasons than that. So if they take the first game and spread it out into 2 seasons, even if there's some extra stuff, that's not really a big deal for me, because as long as they're staying true to the story, I don't really care how long it takes. It doesn't all need to be packed into one season. So I haven't really been totally understanding that take. I saw some people talking some crap about the building in episode 2, and they kind of get out of the QZ and you see this building that's kind of leaning against the other building and it's completely intact. And I saw some people online and some people on YouTube saying, there's no way that building would be fully intact. It would be a crumbled mess, and that's not how it was in the game and all this stuff. So here's the other thing. I have been playing The Last of Us ever since I started this series on HBO Max. I've started playing The Last of Us again. And sure enough, you get out of the QZ and there's this big ass building that's leaning against the other one, and it's completely intact. It's completely true to the game. So I can only imagine that, the showrunners did that for that specific scene. It's literally one of the very first things that Ellie sees when she gets outside the walls. And I actually have a picture of it. I'll put it up on my face here, right there. And I don't know about, like, if a building would really be intact like that, but it was there in the game. That it was specifically there in the game, completely intact, just leaning over. But also, have you guys seen the Leaning Tower of Pisa? I went to Italy when I was like 16 or something, and I saw that thing, and sure enough, it's leaning way the fuck out there. So, I mean, I guess it's possible, right? So I made a comment on the last video that I did with Mike where there's a scene in that second episode, I believe, where Joel and Ellie and Tess get outside the QZ and he kind of asks her, is it everything you hoped for? And she's kind of looking out into the skyline. And she says, well, the jury's still out, but you can't deny that view. And I was worried on the last video that they had taken this from the giraffe scene because I thought that quote was from the scene with the giraffe where she's on top of the building. And I thought that's when she had said that. Turns out it's not at all. Like, as I've been playing through the game, they literally got that scene shot for shot. Like, it is so specifically perfect. It is literally exactly what you see in the game. Everything from the little bridge that they cross, the little, embankment that they go up to and look out over the skyline. It's exactly the same. So I think they did that perfectly. I definitely retract any worry that I had in the previous episode because it must just be something different that she says during the giraffe scene. And I just didn't remember. Something I thought, just again, these are little tiny nitpicks, and as long as they're just like these little nitpicks, that's good with me, man. But Pedro Pascal's southern accent disappears so randomly in episode 3 specifically. I can't remember if it happened in 4, but in 3 I was noticing that his accent was very much coming and going. And it's like, were you just not able to do the accent for that line, or what's the deal there? Another little tiny nitpick is in the game, Joel had never been to Bill's house or like his territory, like his little neighborhood that he has walled off. And so that was just something I thought was interesting as I was playing through the game after seeing that episode. Joel in the game specifically says, oh no, I've never been here before, but I think I know where he is. So I just thought that was kind of funny. Just a weird little change. But I did in episode 3, I did like the scene where you see Tess and Joel show up at Bill's for the first time, and Bill's sitting there at the dinner table with his gun pointed towards him, and Joel's like, get that gun the fuck out of my face, dude. That was a fantastic scene. I really, really like that. My biggest nitpick is I was hoping that by episode 4, I would really start to like Bella Ramsey, and I really don't. Man, it's tough, man. She's pretty awful in this series, and I just don't understand. I don't understand what they saw in her for Ellie. Like, I don't know what about her audition made them say that's our Ellie, because so far nothing is lining up with this girl, and I really don't understand. I don't know if they're trying to make her more like Last of Us 2 Ellie. I would assume that's where they're going, but I think that she could still act like Last of Us 1 Ellie. And especially going through the game recently, just in the past few days, I'm like, that's not what Ellie was at the beginning of the game. She was really shy and kind and really innocent. Even early on, she didn't have this attitude with Joel. She was kind of always like, whatever you say goes. Like, there was never really any pushback there. And so I don't know why they're making her that way or why she is acting that way for the character. But it's really not lining up at all for me. So yeah, I hope she gets better, but I would have thought that by episode 4, I would really at least start to like her more. But I really don't. Matter of fact, I feel like it gets worse with each episode. There are certainly scenes that I like with her, and I'll talk about those in a moment, because there are scenes with her and Joel where it's like, oh, okay, that's the kind of banter that I like between these characters. But her as an actress for this character specifically, I just don't get it. I don't get it at all. And it comes to my last little nitpick. The arcade machine scene was a much sweeter moment in the game. In the show, it's kind of this thing where she's getting all hyped up about this arcade machine, and I felt like she kind of overacted it quite a bit. And Pedro Pascal is like, oh, whatever, like stupid video game or whatever. But in the game, Joel actually like kind of took an interest in that, and he was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, that's cool that you like that thing. And so I don't know why they played that scene like that differently. And so I just kind of hope that they're going somewhere with this. Like, I hope that it has some sort of big payoff in the show, like this kind of antagonism that we're seeing. I hope that there's a moment in the show where that does a complete 180, and that it all makes sense for them to be so antagonistic at the beginning of the series. Um, so I don't know. We'll see how that goes. I'm open to being wrong. All right, so let's go into episode 3. There's no opening flashback for this episode, but luckily the entire episode is one big flashback. So Joel and Ellie are kind of walking on the road, and they're making their way to Bill's place. And there's kind of this there's this funny back and forth where Ellie says something. I forget the beginning of the quote. She says something like, did the other guys always miss? Because she's talking about how, Joel would get in shootouts with other people and stuff. And Joel says, I miss too. It happens more than you think. And Ellie says, because you suck at shooting, or just like in general? And I loved this back and forth and the face that he gives her. And yeah, it was a really good moment. Ellie climbs down into the cellar of a stash spot. It's like this gas station or something, and Joel had hidden some weapons and stuff there. And Ellie's kind of exploring. She finds the hatch in one of the rooms, climbs down, and there's a clicker that's like stuck under a bunch of rubble. And she takes out her knife. She kind of examines it, and she takes out her knife and like stabs it through the eye or through the forehead or something. And I don't mind this choice, but why? Like, why did they make that choice? And again, I don't care. I don't really care, that she kills a clicker this early on. But I just wonder where they're going with it. I just don't know. I don't know what they could possibly be doing with that, because she has shown a couple other like violent tendencies in the show that I don't think she really showed in the game. So again, I don't know if they're trying to build her up to Last of Us Part 2 Ellie, where she's, gone a little, crazy, violent kind of. So maybe that's where they're going with her. In the last video that I did with Mike, we had kind of talked about, how did the virus start? Who is patient 0? And luckily they talk about this right at the beginning of episode 3. Joel says that cordyceps got into the food supply, like bread products. A bunch of people got the same batch all across America Thursday night, and they bought it and ate some around the same day. Boom, clickers a few days later. So it only took one weekend for it all to go to hell because of how fast acting the virus is. And I think it's cool to finally get an answer. I'm sure that this was a fan theory for a long time, but that this had to come straight from Druckmann. That when they were making the show, they deliberately asked Druckmann about this, and that's probably what he told him. And so now we have a canonical answer as to how it all went down. But then we hop into the flashback and we see Bill hiding out in his basement, and all these soldiers are kind of transporting people, and they're looking through houses and everything. And then he says, he's like downstairs with his gun, and he says, Not today, you New World Order jackboot fucks. This is the first thing we hear him say. And it's so funny. I laughed out loud at that. But then we kind of get this montage, this awesome montage of him just going through the whole town and getting everything he needs to survive. He's going to Home Depot and getting tarps and chain link fencing and making tripwires and all this stuff. I love this montage so much. We get a clip of him like sitting, he's like eating his steak or whatever, his chicken or whatever it was, and he's just watching the he's watching the cameras, and he sees a clicker like walk into his trap. And I wish I remembered exactly what he said, but the clicker like walks through it, and he's like, "Oh, that's what you get," or like "never gets old" or something. I think that's what he said. "Oh, that never gets old." And so he's just having a great time being his loner self. And I kind of feel like that's probably how I would be. I feel like, yeah, I would probably really enjoy having my own kingdom and not having to deal with other people. I would definitely be a Bill in that situation. But then he gets somebody stuck in this hole in his yard, and it is Frank. And he kind of reluctantly allows Frank out of the hole. Frank asks for food, and Bill says, "If I feed you, every bum you tell will come looking for a free lunch. This isn't Arby's." And then Frank says, "Arby's didn't have free lunch. It was a restaurant." That was a great line. I absolutely love that. It made me laugh out loud. So then we kind of go on, and we start to see more of Frank. He's asking for a shower, and he's asking for this and that, and he's, goes and plays Bill's piano without asking, and he's just really pushy. And you know, obviously we don't really see him in the game, so we don't know exactly what he was like, but I don't think I like Frank in the TV show, and obviously we're not going to see any more of him. But I don't know. He just kind of seemed like an asshole. Like he seemed really greedy and kind of schemy, I guess. There was just something a little bit gross about him, and I don't know exactly what that is. Like he was always pushing Bill to do things that he didn't want to do, and he just had kind of a weird outlook on things. And obviously it was interesting because he was a complete 180 from who Bill is, and so that made for interesting television. But I was like, I don't think I like this character very much. I liked Bill a lot more. But we do get to see Nick Offerman, aka Ron Swanson, playing the piano and singing, and it brought back memories of Ron Swanson in Parks and Rec with his, what did he have? His saxophone. I forget what the name of his like persona was that would go on stage. But yeah, it brought back memories of that. And I'm like, oh yeah, he's not a bad singer. He's not great, but he's not a bad singer. So the episode kind of goes on, and we see these two fall in love, and they, are together for years and years and years. And at some point, like, I thought the flashback was going to end. I thought the flashback was going to end and we would be back to Joel and Ellie and just kind of going on with their adventure, and they would come find Bill or whatever. But it just kept going. It just kept going. And I'm like, oh my God, is this ever going to end? So I have a note in the middle of my notes that I took on my phone here while I was watching the episode. I just said, ha 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 ha, what the fuck is going on? What the fuck is going on? And it was just weird. Like I kept thinking we were right around the corner from it ending, and it just kept going. And I'm like, I mean, I guess it fits within this world. Like it makes sense for the story. It doesn't take anything away. Obviously, it changes the relationship between Bill and Frank, because I believe in the game they were at odds. They didn't die happily together. Um, so obviously it changes that, but I guess it works. It works in the context of the larger story. But yeah, we spent way, 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 way too much time on Bill and Frank. I don't know why we spent so much time on those characters. I'm on the fence on whether it was a waste of an episode or not. Because again, as long as they are not planning on doing the whole first game in the first season, they can take as long as they want. They can have all this extra stuff, and I don't care, as long as we get all of the major story beats and it's not rushed into one season. So hopefully that's what they're doing here. Because again, I'll say it again, I really don't mind getting this extra stuff, but it was kind of to the point where I'm like, this is like an 80-minute episode, and I don't know why we're hanging out with these characters for as long as we are. At some point, raiders show up, and this was funny because you have this grizzled prepper guy, and he's just standing out in the middle of the road with a bolt action rifle, of all things, just kind of taking out these raiders. And I'm like, I mean, no, no. He would be behind cover. He may be using a bolt action rifle, but he would be behind cover. If he was standing in the middle of the street, he would have something fully automatic for sure. And I know a lot of people have commented on that. I'm not, original in that or anything, but I did think it was really funny. I did notice it when I was watching, like, you would not be doing that. So then we kind of skip ahead, obviously you guys know what happened. They die, and I really kind of liked the way that they died, I guess. I thought it was really sweet, and it was just kind of like, we're going to choose how we want to go out. And so they did. But then we get back to Joel and Ellie, and we get this amazing letter. I was kind of moaning about how much time we were spending with those characters, and I stand by that. But when we got that letter, all that time that we spent with Bill and Frank leading up to this gut punch that is the letter. And oh, it was so good. It was so, so good. I think it really nailed home the point of the letter, and players of The Last of Us will really understand that, kind of knowing what Joel does at the end of the game. And it's just really good because Bill in the letter, he talks about how much he hates the world, but that he found the one person worth saving. And he says to kill any motherfuckers that get in your way of coming between you and that one person. And as we know, that is exactly Joel's outlook on the world, and that is exactly what he does at the end of the game. And so getting this gut punch, and like the camera just goes to Ellie, and it's like, oh, it's so good. I loved that letter so much, because we know that Joel is going to kill every single motherfucker that gets in the way of that girl. Yeah. So anyways, I really like how that hit, regardless of how I may feel about the rest of the episode. And to be clear, I liked this episode. I thought it was good television. I just didn't understand why we were spending so much time with them. I'm not going to belabor that point. The bunker, they go down into Bill's bunker downstairs, and Ellie says, "Holy shit, this guy was a genius," which is funny because, I feel like the internet kind of makes fun of all of the prepper guys, and like why did they have these giant bunkers with all these guns and stuff. And yeah, like nobody nowadays would be calling any of those people a genius. But in the context of an apocalypse and a girl who never knew any of that stuff, she's like, "Oh, this guy was brilliant because of course he is." So yeah, I thought that was super funny, and her asking to, can we take a gun or what? And Joel's just like, no, which I thought was stupid. Like, wouldn't you pack up every single gun on that wall? Wouldn't you pack up every single round of ammo? So I thought that was kind of odd. But then we get Ellie and Joel in the truck. Oh, and this is so good because she's never been in a vehicle before, or at least I think that's what she said. She's like, it's like a spaceship, and it's the same kind of, I don't know, it's what I would expect from Ellie, and so I really liked them getting into the truck and kind of heading out. And then we get I actually don't know who this is, but they put in a Linda Ronstadt tape, and Ellie doesn't know who that is, but Joel does. He's like, no, 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 keep it here. And so they roll out onto the highway with Linda Ronstadt playing. And I'm like, yeah, that was a good way to end the episode. I really enjoyed that. But I guess kind of final thoughts on these, and some stuff from the after the episode thing. First of all, Nick Offerman needs to get an award for his acting in this episode. I guarantee that he will be nominated for something for his work in this episode because he was so good. It was so outside of the norm of anything else that I've seen him do. And I think he's going to get recognized for that for sure. So after the episode, Neil Druckmann says that this is the biggest departure from the game. And if this is the biggest departure, then I'm good with it. I've heard some people say that episode 4 is a departure from the game, but I can't quite remember what is happening in that part of the game. So I don't know if it is or not. It didn't feel like one. I just hope that they don't spend too much time on that group of marauders, but we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, if episode 3 is the biggest departure, I think we're good to go, guys. Neil says that with his show, he wanted to contrast where love can bring you, and that it was important to show the purer, innocent side of love because at the end, of course, we're going to see the, desperate, depraved kind of love where Joel gets really violent. And, maybe it was a good idea in this episode to show that this world can have both. It can have a very pure and wholesome love, but there's also the, kind of sick kind of love, depending on how you look at it. I've always viewed Joel as doing the right thing in that circumstance, but I know a lot of other people feel differently about it. But yeah, I think that's a good point that, you can contrast those two things and it'll hit really, really well when we do get to where the first game ends. So going into episode 4, Ellie and Joel are on the road. We get some good stuff with them. He's needing to get gas. So he's going through all these vehicles on the highway, and she's reading from like a joke book or something. And she says, "Why did the Scarecrow get an award? Because he was outstanding in his field." And all of these jokes actually made me laugh out loud, especially the one at the end. And I know you guys know what I'm talking about, and we will for sure get to that. But yeah, I liked this, and it kind of gave us a good glimpse because at the beginning of the episode, we have Joel just being like, just kind of upset with all the, not upset, I guess, but just kind of annoyed with Ellie. And then at the end of the episode, we actually get him opening up quite a bit. They're kind of camping out in the woods, and they're both ready to go to bed, and Joel has his gun next to him. He's about to fall asleep. Right before he does, Ellie says, "No one's going to find us, right?" And Joel just kind of like takes a minute, and he's like, "No one's going to find us." And then we kind of get this other clip of like Ellie sleeping, and in the background, Joel is standing watch with his rifle, just waiting to see if anybody comes at them. And I kind of took that to mean that he didn't sleep that night, for that he foregoes sleep and kind of stays vigilant over Ellie with the rifle. And so it's, you're starting to see this protective side of him kind of come out. And we even saw that in the last episode where, she went into that hatch in that gas station, and when he couldn't initially find her, he was really worried, and he was like, Ellie, Ellie. And so I think we're starting to see this kind of paternal, protective instinct come out in him. And I really like the way that this episode showed that. We learned that Tommy joined a crew after the outbreak, and Joel joined him, which is where he met Tess. So that's kind of interesting. I don't remember if that's the same from the game, but it sounds plausible, I guess. Again, I've forgotten a lot of what's happened in the game. That's why I'm going back through and playing it. But the past few days, I've been really busy with editing stuff, so I haven't gotten to get to where episode 4 is yet. I'm still in the Bill section. So I don't know. I don't know if that's for sure how it went. But they say that Tommy met Marlene, who talked him into going into the Fireflies. I do believe that's true. And Joel mentions later that they did what they needed to do to survive. And Ellie asks if this means that, he would entrap people like they did when they're going into that city, and there's that guy that's like, hey, help, and Joel's like, no, we're gonna go straight ahead. Joel was saying that, sometimes they did stuff like that because you have to survive. So it's kind of a good glimpse into who Joel is. I think people forget that Joel is, as much as I love him, as much as I love the character, he is a violent person. Like, he is not a clean hero. He has a very, very dirty past, where he's done things that he's not proud of. He's probably killed innocent people, and you're supposed to feel torn about him. You're supposed to feel like he is a character in an impossible situation, and I think they're doing that really well in the show so far. The whole Brian scene was so good, where they crash their truck. Ellie is like inside the wall in that little hole, and Joel is getting like strangled by this Brian guy. Ellie has hidden a gun, and she pulls it out of her pocket, and she shoots the guy that's on top of Joel. That guy kind of like, scoots away, and he's begging for his life over and over. He's begging for his life. And Joel's like, go back to your hiding spot. So she does, and I believe he finished him with a knife. I think he killed him with a knife. But yeah, that was a good scene. That was a really, really good scene. I don't remember Ellie doing that in the game, but I'm also not to this part yet in my replay. So who knows? But I just thought that was a really good moment. I liked how she shoots the guy, and there's kind of this moment, they even talk about it in the after the episode thing, where Joel has a chance to like comfort her, and this guy is like on the ground screaming, and it's just like this really impossible kind of situation, and he doesn't. And so, she goes back into her hiding spot, and he kind of has to take care of that later. He has to kind of go through all of that later. And yeah, that scene, I really just want to go back and rewatch that scene. It was so good. So then it kind of flips over to the Marauders, or just like the people. I don't know what else to call them, but it's kind of this crew led by this lady who is looking for Henry. Was that his name? And she's kind of going person by person, interrogating them, trying to find this guy. And I don't have much to say about her, or the rest of the crew really, but I thought it was funny that the guy that voices Tommy in the games plays, I think his name was Perry in the show. I'm trying to figure out who this girl is from, the lady that's playing the leader. Let me know down in the comments. I think, wasn't she the lady from Fargo? I can't remember. Joel and Ellie kind of make their way to this back room where he's like putting down all this glass and he puts down these cushions, and they just have this really quiet moment where they're just kind of laying down on the cushions, and he's talking about it not being fair for her at her age to have to shoot somebody or really just to be in this world at all. And she asks if it gets easier with age, and he says it doesn't. And it kind of shows that it's not really fair at any age. Like, nobody of any age should have to do that. And I think that came across really, really well in that scene. And I just love how, like, kind of quiet and serious and heartfelt that whole scene became. But then we get them about to go to bed, and Ellie says, "Did you know that diarrhea is hereditary? It runs in your genes." That was good. I loved that. I laughed out loud at that. And so did Joel. And so this is that moment where we get Joel feeling like it's okay to let go and open up, and he starts laughing with her. And I think this is a sign of kind of a pivot point where we start to enjoy this relationship between them. And this is kind of what I was talking about earlier. I still don't like Bella Ramsey as Ellie, but I do like these moments. If it was a different actress, I would like them even more. But I do like these moments between Joel and Ellie where just kind of get them goofing around and some banter and whatnot. But then they wake up to guns in their faces, and I bet that's Henry. I think that's Henry and maybe his son or whoever was with him, because they're also on the run. They're also trying to hide from whatever her name was. Do I have it written down? No, I don't. So yeah, because they're kind of like telling them to be quiet. And so I think that in the next episode, we're gonna see them come to a truce. They're like, "Hey, we're on the same side. Let's all be cool." So I'm pretty sure that is where that's going. But then we get this song, "True Faith" by New Order is the song in the credits. And I think that was a really good music choice. It was really kind of at odds with how that episode ended. I just thought it was a good music choice. I don't have much to say about that. I just kind of liked it. So in the after the episode thing, Druckmann or somebody mentioned that Ellie is put in this situation where she only has one choice, and that is to trust this kind of scary and violent man and trust him to be her protector, which, if you played the games, that he is. But in Ellie's situation, that would be really, really scary, right? I thought that was a good point. So I kind of talked about how Joel has a chance to comfort her, and he doesn't. Ellie is quick to walk away and wipe the tears and stuff it down because she's just like him. And this is what the showrunner said in the after the episode. So do I agree with this? I don't know. Because I definitely need a recap on the first game to remember if she is exactly like him. I think, they're kind of polar opposites. And then as we get into the second game, they become a lot more similar. So I don't know if that's what they're referring to, but in the first game, she's pretty kind of happy-go-lucky. And I feel like she's maybe a lot more free with her emotions and thoughts in general. But to some extent, I could definitely agree with this. I think so. So something they mentioned in the after the episode thing, that this group of marauders in the game was just some random obstacle you had to get past. They didn't have any like background info or anything like that. And I think that this is exactly what the show should be doing, because if you think about it, and I may be misremembering, but how much story do we actually get in The Last of Us? A lot of those like travel scenes were just them kind of getting through like encampments and groups of clickers and stuff like that. And so I think that it's a good idea to give personality to some of these, nameless bandits and stuff, because a lot of the times in the game, they were just some random group. And so I think that's something that the show can do really well, kind of personifying these things. They almost have to. I couldn't imagine the show just being them like going through kind of the wasteland and just having like these nameless enemies that they just kind of have to fight their way through. That wouldn't be fun for a viewer. So I do like that they're giving personality to these characters, and I think that that's a perfect idea for the show. Then to close that out, Druckmann says at the end, I love humanizing villains. This is a story about people making choices, and whether they're a villain or not depends on your perspective. And he could not have hit the nail more on the head with that one. That is absolutely true. That is absolutely what The Last of Us is. And I think that it's Joel is a great example of that, where, by the time you get to the end, is he a villain? I don't know. I don't think so. But, there's lots of really good debate on that subject. And I feel like, you know, one person could think he's a villain, one person could think he's a hero. I'm somewhere in the middle. But I like that he said that at the end there, because it's going to be a show that is in shades of gray, It's not going to be black or white. And I think the people that didn't play the games are going to watch this show and have to, kind of see how they feel about it when it gets to the end of the first game. All right, well, that is all I have in my notes. But I think as far as kind of final thoughts go, I'm fairly optimistic. I think that episodes 1 and 2 were kind of a steady climb. They got better and better. And then 3 and 4 kind of plateaued a bit. And that's okay. I think that's fine. As long as it doesn't go down. Yeah, I think a show can totally plateau. There can be filler episodes. As long as they're not planning on cramming the whole thing into one season, I think we're fine. I really liked these 2 episodes. I liked episodes 3 and 4 for very different reasons. 3 had just like a great kind of story. Like, even though it wasn't like a story from the video game, it was still a story in this world. And I think it was a well told story. But then we get to episode 4 and we get the fun jelly. Hey, that's a great name for the two of them together. Joel and Ellie. We get a lot of great scenes with them and them kind of sneaking around and evading gunshots. And yeah, it was episode 4 was a good episode as well. It's just not very like memorable. Like episode 3 is memorable, you know what I mean? But even as I'm doing this recording, I'm reading through a lot of these notes and I'm like, I don't remember a lot of episode 4. And I've seen some people on Twitter and whatnot being, kind of worried and being like, oh no, it's going to start sucking any minute now. It's going to get bad. And I don't really think so. I think these episodes were fine. Again, it plateaued. It didn't go up. It didn't go down. So I think that we're doing pretty good. And I'm really, really excited to see what episode 5 is. By the way, if you don't know, episode 5 comes out on Friday on HBO Max because of the Super Bowl on Sunday. So we're all going to get that episode early, which will be nice. So yeah, I'm super excited for that. I can't remember what I saw in the clips for next week. I can't remember if that's the one where they see Tommy or not. That might be episode 6. But yeah, looking forward to it, guys. All right, guys, that is going to wrap us up here. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight. I will see you next time for more Last of Us content. I'm going to get some other friends here on the show over the next couple weeks where, Mike and I will continue to do the, 2 episodes at a time deep dives. But I'm going to get some other friends on here and kind of get their takes because this is a show that I'm really, really enjoying. And I'd love to explore a bunch of different, avenues of the show, I guess, and kind of get some of my other friends' takes and stuff. So you'll see those over the next couple weeks. They won't be the deep dives, but there'll be other discussions. So yeah, hit that subscribe button because there is a ton of great content to come. Twitter and Discord are linked below, as well as the link to our main channel if you enjoy fantasy and sci-fi books. We do a lot of author interviews and often talk with other, content creators like other YouTubers and stuff like that. So definitely stay tuned for that, or go check out our main channel for that. And yeah, until next time, be sure to keep your jeans dry, with diarrhea being hereditary and all. God. All right, guys. Good night.